Okay. Okay. So nobody.
How are you? How are you? And I picked that up. I like it. How are you? So anyway, makes no sense probably, but, Marge, you got anything to tell us?
Yes, I have some guests that I want to introduce,
Oh, my.
and they don't mind being connected with John and me. We went to academy together, and so they're our age. And this is Roger and Carol Eden. And they went to Andrews Academy, and Carol's mom was the nurse right there. Right, at Berrien Springs. Anyway, we've known them, well, almost forever.
It was
And
a century
visiting.
ago.
What?
Yeah, last century.
It was. Anyway, they're staying with us and we're just glad they're here. So, and then would you mind introducing your guest?
So I brought today with me Fred Knopper, no stranger to this part of the country and someone I consider my adopted father. And then his cousin Miranda, from the UK.
From where?
UK.
Oh, UK.
Whoa.
Okay.
That's the word language now.
That's better than Berrien Springs. They live in North Carolina now, so they're not so far away.
That's great. Before we get started, I just want to tell you that this could be my last time to ever stand in front of you. Because I could be kicked out of the church after this lesson.
We are all on pins and needles.
I vote against that. But, we'll see if Jesus is in the room this morning. I know he will be. I know he will be. That said, Roy, will you have our prayer?
Loving Father in heaven, what a joy it is to come and worship you on Sabbath day. We ask, O Lord, that you give us the grace and power to worship in spirit and truth, that the words that we hear will be placed in our hearts, so that we will be ready when our Savior returns. Be with each one here in a special way. Help them with everything.
Thank you, Roy. Just to tell you how impressed I've been about this lesson, I forgot my Bible. So let me pull up Acts 18.
Like my Bible?
One of my friends says, I'm praying for you today. I discussed this lesson with him last night. So let me get, well, you can read it. I've read it, so we'll take it from there. Okay. Ever done something a certain way? And by the way, speak up. This is a discussion class. Please raise your hand if you have something you want to say. We hope that you do. Make your comment brief. A lot of people, but we do want to hear from you. And please speak up. I have a serious hearing issue. Serious. But I want to hear you. Have you ever done something a certain way in your work or personal life? Someone came along and said, hey, you're missing a key step here. I can show you how to make this better or more interesting or faster. Has that ever happened to you? Want to share it with me? Anything? Yes.
Well, right now at Southern, they are new faculty at the School of Business, Sergio and I, and every day we're checking our notes. Okay. Can you show me something, how to do this better? Or between the two of us, we're always checking our notes to see if we can do something better for the students.
Good. Dan.
Many years ago, I heated my house with wood when I was real young, and a friend of mine came by and saw me up on the roof cleaning the chimney out. And he stopped, pulled in, and he said, you're missing an important point. I said, well, tell me. Tonight, build you a really hot fire and take a gallon of water, pour it in a coffee cup and throw it on it. When it builds back up, take the gallon of water, and when you're out of water, your chimney will be clean as it ever was. I thought he was pulling a joke on me, so I wasn't even going to do it. And I thought, well, I'm not doing anything. Let's try it. The next morning, I climbed up on the roof, It was clean as it was the day I put it in there. The steam cuts every bit of that out of that chimney. And he said, that's a very important step you're missing. I'm like, I'm up on the roof. All I need was a gallon of water.
Well, Danny, welcome to my life. Every month I get a financial statement from a certain facility I own, and the last few months, the Excel spreadsheet, it's a profit, a P&L statement, profit and loss. And every month I try to open it up, and on the spreadsheet is just a bunch of gobbledygook. It says loading, or it has all kind of decimal points, or it's there, it's all screwed up. And so finally, last week, I called in, my office is in the Marriott downtown, and I called the general manager, and he's like a son to me. I said, I'm sick of this. Every month, it's the same old story. Get me a tech guy over here, my brother's office, get him over here. Get him over here this morning, because I need to know this stuff. He said, well, let me look at it. Well, let's try this. So he took my cursor on my put the cursor on one margin, moved it a millimeter of an inch, and voila, it was there. I just need a young person following me around in the technology age, hour by hour. It was helpful to you when you were younger and enthusiastic about the faith. Remember that person? That worked with you, that talked to you, was always there? How did they help you? What did they do for you? Now, don't tell me you were born a brilliant follower of Jesus, because I'm not buying that. Who was it in your life about that person? That man or woman? Where now do you sense God has equipped you to serve? Because of what you learned. How does it help you to serve in your? Well, I know you can answer this one. When you were a kid, did people tell you you talk too much? Or you talk too little? By the way, I'm getting all these questions out of the Serendipity Bible. I always go there before I start a lesson just to see what clever little things they have to say. What role do women play in your church? How do you feel about that? Church still has some ground to make up with women. I say would be the kindest way I could put it. When I was in college, women did not make the same amount as a female professor as a male professor. Well, this is 50 years ago. So when Frank Knittel became president of the university or the college back then, he demanded that they be paid the same. Oh my goodness. Oh my. And then to top it off, it had to be retroactive for like 10 years. That did not go well, but they got their money. Have you seen someone from a distance that you felt you just couldn't be comfortable with? I think we all have. Or you decided just to discount them because they had a strange personality or an odd or different belief, just sort of dismiss them. What happened to you? Please be honest. Give me a nod or no, it didn't. There's a man where I work out 3 days a week at the sports barn. It just impresses me as sort of a doofus, you know, sort of a. He doesn't say much, and if I get close to him, he'll say, I'm using that machine. Okay, I don't like you anyway, so I'll just move over here. You know, I don't want to be around you. Came up to me a couple of days ago and he said, I just want to tell you something. See where this goes. I admire the way that you've had a trainer and worked out. I can just tell by looking at you, what an improvement you've made to yourself. Like, pretty nice. Said, I'm Ken. He said, I'm John. I have a new friend that I didn't want to be around. Now, things have changed. Let's read chapter 18 of Acts. And since I have no Bible, someone start and read 5 or 6 verses, huh? And then you take it from there.
18 verse 1, Acts 18 verse 1. After this, Paul left Athens and went to Corinth. There he met a Jew named Aquila, a native of Pontus, who had recently come from Italy with his wife Priscilla because Claudius had ordered all the Jews leave Rome. Paul went to see them. Because he was a tent maker, as they were, he stayed and worked with them. Every Sabbath, he reasoned in the synagogue, trying to persuade Jews and Greeks. When Silas and Timothy came from Macedonia, Paul devoted himself exclusively to preaching, testifying to the Jews that Jesus was the Christ. But when the Jews opposed Paul and became abusive, he shook out his clothes and in protest and said to them, "Your blood be on your own heads. I am clear of my responsibility. From now on, I will go to the Gentiles." That's verse 7.
Then he left and went to the home of Justus, a Gentile who worshiped God and lived next door to the synagogue. Crispus, the leader of the synagogue, and everyone in his household believed in the Lord. Many others in Corinth also heard Paul, became believers, and were baptized. One night the Lord spoke to Paul in a vision and told him, "Don't be afraid. Speak out. Don't be silent. For I am with you, and no one will attack or harm you, for many people in this city belong to me." So Paul stayed there for the next year and a half, teaching the word of God. Bill 12.
While Gallio was proconsul of Achaia, the Jews of Corinth made a united attack on Paul and brought him to the place of judgment. This man, they charged, is persuading the people to worship God in ways contrary to the law. Just as Paul was about to speak, Gallio said to them, "If you Jews are making a complaint about some misdemeanor or serious crime, it would be reasonable for me to listen to you. Since it involves questions about words and names, your own law, settle the matter yourselves. I will not be a judge of such things." So he drove them off. And the crowd there turned on Sosthenes, the synagogue leader, and beat him in front of the proconsul. Gallio showed no concern whatsoever.
Paul stayed on in Corinth for some time. Then he left the brothers, sailed to Syria, accompanied by Priscilla and Aquila. Before he sailed, he had cut his hair off in Centuria because of a vow he'd taken. They arrived at Ephesus, where Paul left Priscilla and Aquila. He himself went to the synagogue and reasoned with the Jews. When they asked him to spend more time with them, he declined. But as he left, he promised, "I will come back if it's God's will." And he set sail for Ephesus. When he landed at Caesarea, he went up and greeted the church and went down to Antioch.
Spending some time in Antioch, Paul set out from there and traveled from place to place throughout the region. Meanwhile, a Jew named Apollos, a learned man, scriptures. He and instructed in the way of the Lord, and he spoke with great fervor about Jesus. He knew only the baptism of John. He began to speak. They invited him to their home and explained to him the way of God more adequately. He just wanted to go to Achaia. The brothers encouraged him and wrote to the disciples there to welcome him. Providing he was a great help to those who by grace he vigorously refuted the Jews in public debate, being from the scriptures that Jesus.
Let's take a look at Corinth first. That's where he's landed. Corinth was the largest city in Greece. It had 700,000 people and was considered one of the most beautiful cities in the world. In fact, one of the most beautiful cities ever known to mankind. Located, or was located, or still is located, near the Isthmus of Corinth. Tiny stretch of land that separated the Mediterranean Sea and the Aegean Sea. Remember, the Isthmus is just a strip between two countries or a certain area, and there's an ocean on each side of it, like the Panama Canal, the Isthmus of Panama. This was the Isthmus of Corinth. It was so small, it's only 4 miles across, that at that time they built a road of pavers and they rolled the ships across from one sea to the next, that 4 miles, so they wouldn't have to sail around the southern part of Greece. Today, there's a canal there, which is seldom used. It's 4 miles long and 80.7 feet wide. Still there, just not used because it's so narrow. But they would pull the ships across this small area of land. It was a pivotal location intersecting the north and south and east and west. Corinth became known as the crossroads of the world. Its location guaranteed its continued prosperity. But even in the pagan world, Corinth was known for its moral corruption. This is what Paul was sailing into. In the Apostle Paul's day, Corinth had several nicknames. It was known as Carnal Corinth, Sin City, or Vanity Fair, or as a friend of mine wanted me to add, Californians.
Vegas.
Won't record this one, Keith, we won't send this one. To Corinthanize a person was to corrupt a person. There was no greater insult to a woman than to be called a Corinthian. City featured new shops, sprawling marketplaces, restored and greatly enlarged temples, fresh water supplies, numerous public buildings, governmental buildings, and an amphitheater that sat 14,000. Recent excavations have uncovered over 33 wine shops located in downtown Corinth. The wine shops featured lofted roofs. Travelers would get drunk, wine, and they would be enticed into these lofts for illicit activity with prostitutions or other partygoers. Prostitution in Corinth was the chief occupation. Temple of Aphrodite employed 1,000 prostitutes. Most every woman must go to Aphrodite's temple and have intercourse with a stranger at least once, then receive money from the stranger as a sacred act. And once the intercourse is over, she's fulfilled her sacred duty and she goes home. They have a place for her to wash herself, then she goes home. So this is what Paul, Priscilla, and Aquila found themselves in. As a student missionary, how would you like to take this one on? Aquila and Priscilla are mentioned 6 times. Let me read these to you quickly. In Acts 18:2, there he met a Jew named Aquila, a native of Pontus, who had recently come from Italy with his wife Priscilla, because Claudius had ordered all the Jews to leave Rome. In Acts 18, it says Paul stayed on in Corinth for some time. Then he left his brothers and sisters and sailed to Syria, accompanied by Priscilla and Aquila. And verse 19, it says they arrived at Ephesus. Paul left Priscilla himself, went to the synagogue and tried to reason with the Jews. Verse 26, he, Apollos, began to speak boldly in the synagogue. When Priscilla and Aquila heard him, they invited him to their home. Notice that, they invited him to their home and explained to him the way more adequately. Romans 16, it says, greet Priscilla and Aquila, my co-workers in Jesus Christ. 1 Corinthians 16:19, the churches in province of Asia send you greetings. Aquila and Priscilla greet you warmly in the Lord, and so does the church that meets at their house. 2 Timothy 4:19, he says, please greet Priscilla and Aquila in the house of Onesiphorus. Aquila and Priscilla, what do we know about them? Talk to me. What do we know at this point?
They're married.
They're married. Yep,
Refugees. They were refugees. They got
yes, they
kicked out.
were refugees. Left home. Well, they got kicked out of home, but they left home. Anything else come to mind?
Yep.
Tent makers, hospitable.
Where are you, Ken? Want to say something?
Tent makers, you
I'm sorry,
said.
John.
Tent makers
Yes.
and hospitable.
Yeah.
They lived originally in Rome, but had to leave Rome as refugees because of the persecution of the Christians.
Come back to that in a minute. Well, we know that it was a tent maker, yes.
It must have been successful and wealthy because in Rome, but still they were had some kind of a house that was big enough.
Just thought of something. I don't know if they were Roman citizens or not. I'll leave that, but that's a big advantage to be in this situation of being a Roman citizen. I'm going to assume they were. I don't know.
They were teachers.
They were teachers. Anything else come to mind?
They acted as a team, like they were equal. They had the same goal, the two of them.
Yeah, they did. So he was a successful tent maker and possibly involved in leatherworks, ship sails, and tents for the army. So this is kind of a good place to be with a Roman army so big, needing all these things. If you had a contract with Rome or some distributor or something, you had a built-in business. Successful businessman. He and Priscilla had left Italy since Claudius had expelled the Jews from Rome. And Marlene, you were saying something about why did he expel them?
Because at that time in Rome, there was a lot of turmoil between Jewish Christians and non-Jews. So half of these.
Jews were constantly battling with the new Christians. And I'm sure there were disturbances. And if you'll remember, for all these years we've studied about Rome, they don't like drama. They don't like uprisings. They don't like mobs. They want law and order, and they will make it happen like that. There's always a regiment or some group of soldiers in these little or larger areas in most cases. Do not riot. You don't even protest. not allowed. Claudius just got sick and tired of all these complaints. It was just, he said, enough. Everybody leave. Go away. Got bigger things to do than listen to you folks fight about your religion. So they left. Had to.
And Ken, you asked the question, they were not Roman citizens.
They were not Roman.
No, that's
Okay.
why they had to leave.
Okay, good to know. That makes it harder. Paul was a Roman citizen. Christianity was just spreading too fast for the Jews. They couldn't handle it. Priscilla. Know anything about her? Did you read anything about her? She was born of high standing. It means she was wealthy. She's mentioned 6 times in the Bible. This is important. Did you go to your references and pick up why she is, how she's mentioned, and why this caught the author's attention? She's mentioned in front of her husband most of those times. 5 of the 6 times she's mentioned, it says Priscilla and Aquila.
If you go to a different translation, though, I went between NIV and New King James. It varies the order,
Does it?
so it is not specific per verse.
Yeah. See, once she's mentioned in front of her husband, that's unusual because, see, women were the property of their husband at that time. So the husband was generally always mentioned before his wife because he belonged, she was his, just like Judy in my relationship. Works out great. Yes.
Since she came from a wealthy family, perhaps the tent making business was. That's how
Well,
that lesson.
she seemed to be no hindrance to her husband. She seemed to be right on board with everything in the business. Each time she's mentioned, Paul expresses his thanks to her and to Aquila and how they travel with him. He wants them to make sure they're greeted or acknowledged by the people of the city. He wants them right off the bat to be welcomed. It's so important in this class that you're welcomed every week. I grew up in churches where there was no greeter. There was no one welcome. It was so tiny. I mean, in Calhoun, Georgia, you didn't need one. But and as things progressed through the years, really nice to have a greeter. I think I told you when I went to Bernie Miller's church, the interracial church here on Brainerd Road, Moore Road and Brainerd Road. You remember how I was greeted? Basically, it's supposed to be interracial. It's mostly a black church, and I loved it. Bernie Miller has become a great friend of mine. He'll be teaching the last Sabbath of this month. Bernie Miller used to be vice president of Sony Records. He wrote songs with Michael Jackson. He wrote songs with Tina Turner. She died. They were writing a song for a Broadway play. When I went to Bernie's church the first time, this guy greeted me at the door and just shook my hand. So I walked through the door and this large African lady grabbed me. And my feet almost came off the ground. So when she finally got through with me, another lady grabbed me and hugged me. So after I got my oxygen fixed from hyperventilating, another guy grabbed me and says, "Let me show you to your seat, wherever you want to sit." It's nice. Yes.
Growing up, we had some friends. On Sabbath, they decided we should go. And they greeted us so warmly in couldn't say enough nice things about it. That we were there. We got little red ribbons to show that we were visitors. We got seated, my daughter. visitors.
I'm telling you this because there's a point about this to be made later on in the lesson. About other people, other churches. Priscilla. She's a shrewd business person. She is well versed in the scriptures. And she's well liked. She's obviously a great organizer and a leader. But the most important thing we see is she's very astute about how she approaches people regarding her religion. Very careful not to offend. Priscilla and Apollos. Let's talk about Apollos this morning because he's really key here for this lesson. And there's a lot of important things in Acts 18, but Apollos struck me. He and Priscilla's relationship. So let me read, or let's read, and I'll read it to you. Acts 18 verses 24 and 26. Meanwhile, a Jew named Apollos, a native of Alexandria, and Alexandria is in northern Egypt. Alexandria at that time had the largest library in the world. Came to Ephesus. He was a learned man with a thorough knowledge of the scriptures. He had been instructed in the way of the Lord, and he spoke with great fervor and taught about Jesus accurately, though he knew only the baptism of John. He began to speak boldly in the synagogue. When Priscilla and Aquila heard him, what did they do? They invited him to their home and explained to him the way of God more adequately. Please notice how they handled Apollos. They didn't dress him down about his lack of knowledge. They probably approached him after they had time to listen to him, check him out, see who was associated with what he liked, disliked. I'm sure Priscilla asked, well, you know what he likes to eat? It was important to them. They wanted to understand his personality before they approached him. Then they lovingly invited him into their home. Now, I don't think that there's a week that goes by in this area that Marge and John don't have somebody in their home feeding them. Would that be an accurate statement? I think it is.
Ask Rob. He likes my food, that's it.
They lovingly invited them into their home. Truth, this was taught to me a long time ago. I forget it, and it pops up in some of my notes. Truth not spoken with love will be rejected. It will be every time. Every time it's rejected. Apollos, tell me your impression of him. Not what you said, but tell me what you think. Talk to me just a little bit here. Apollos.
Open to new information. He was open to new information.
Board one.
He was open to receiving the
Yes.
new information.
Open to learn. What else do you notice about him?
Well educated.
That's what I was thinking. Well educated, well read, studied. I don't know who worked with him, or maybe he just spent a lot of time on his own, but someone had to influence him. We've all been influenced by somebody to help us learn, right?
The Living Bible says he was a wonderful Bible teacher and that he spoke. In Alexandria, he had learned about John the Baptist and he learned about this Jesus guy and he was preaching boldly that the Messiah is coming. That's when Aquila and Priscilla said, hey. Then he started preaching, the Messiah has already come.
Yeah. His teaching message was about the law and repentance. For John, repent, be baptized. about the law and repentance instead of the Gospels. And these folks were not finding peace in their hearts like so many of our friends who have their rules and regulations. Hard for them to find peace in their heart, just following rules and regulations. Don't wear this, I don't do that, I don't eat this, I don't go there. There you're in trouble. I don't think I need to expound on that in this room much further. Well, drink from that cup. It's interesting to me when I have these conversations with someone who's not this church, they look at me like, I can't watch the Alabama ball game on Saturday afternoon. Really?
Really?
It's got nothing to do with religion.
There are exceptions to the rule. We had a family in our church in Dakota, Paul Porter, very strict. Didn't drink milk, didn't eggs, didn't eat ice cream.
My kind of guy, yeah.
Yeah. But when he came to our house, he let his kids eat what we were eating, drank milk, they ate ice cream. But at home, he didn't. That to me, the legalist knows the Lord too. He was in touch, and actually I recommended him being the pastor when I left, and they put him in as pastor. He wouldn't even hug people. So I finally told him that you've got at least a side hug. And they loved him. He was a great pastor, but he was very legalistic. Good one.
I think I mentioned that when my mother began to take Bible studies when I was a little boy, the Adventist minister came out and we still had hogs, raising hogs. You know what he did? When we showed him around the farm, he reached over and started petting the hog. You know, to outsiders, this seems so bizarre, so strange. But to us, we understand. The greatest distance in the world is 18 inches. From here, your heart, to here. It's hard to get this all working together sometimes. You know this, but how do you really feel about it? How do you convey this through this? It's a challenge. It's hard. Now, I want to mention Bud Light to you. Bud Light beer. And you're probably thinking, what in the world Bud Light beer have to do with discussion in this class? I want to talk about it for a few minutes in the transgender issue. These beer drinkers have knocked the #1 beverage in America, not to its knees, but they have put a whipping on it. They have hurt it. Sales are down 17%, the #1 beer in America. It's kind of breathtaking what they did it, and they did it so fast. I'm sitting at a light the other day, or this week, like Monday, I'm at a light. There's a convenience store over there, and I'm at the light, and there's a Bud Light truck parked parallel. You can't see the store. All you see is the trailer on the Bud Light. The cans of Bud Light are as tall as this room. That's all that's on the truck, much different than it was 6 or 8 months ago. They had a different can of beer. They had a man, woman on the picture of the beer. The transgender person was on the beer. These beer drinkers made a stand. What has the SDA church done to make a stand? I talked to a couple of ministers. They said, well, 2 or 3 years ago, we sent out our views on this and our belief on this, which is good. But what changed? Nothing. I'm not really sure I want to be part of that charge that's being led to change, or going to the fight against this, but didn't have much of an effect. My question to you this morning, after these Bud Light drinkers made their stand, what are they doing? How do you feel about this? Are they standing for moral values? Are they standing for their Christian values? Do they just simply hate gay people? Are my past friends at Bud's Beer Joint hate monger? Or is God bringing Bud Light drinkers closer to him through this movement? I know you didn't really come in here prepared to answer a lot of these questions. Thought about it? Yes.
Yeah, the judicial system punishes people that stand against the current. I could lose my job. I stood against that publicly. I am forced to share a bathroom fully intact male, not complain, and if I do, I go home without pay.
I think the way to make a statement, what they're doing, just don't buy the beer. Now, Chick-fil-A, they wouldn't hire certain people in the restaurant, and if they were going to force them to work on Sunday, they were gonna close down. They said, we got plenty of money, we don't need to have beer. And government decided best not to close them. When they were fighting with the government, the lines at Chick-fil-A were a mile long. People were supporting the institution. And I think the best way to make a statement is to, don't do it, or support what you like by being there for it. And it makes a big difference, because money stops. Take the money away from people and they say, okay, we made a mistake, we shouldn't put them on the.
You know any fast food restaurants that have the drive-through lines as many as Chick-fil-A?
Amazing.
My grandkids demand we go to Chick-fil-A. I drive home with the windows down. All 4 windows are down to get the grease smell out.
It's always a struggle to decide what stand you're going to take on what moral issues. I do think, I like what you said early on today about taking any stand. You don't do it with love, not going to accomplish anything.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one thing that we ought to always remember. Hard to remember, because you get wrapped up in the moment, or in your arguments, and you want the force of your opinion to carry the day. And I struggle with wanting to turn this around and do it lovingly, whatever position or whatever mountain you want to, hill you want to die on. You have to make those decisions, and those are hard decisions to make.
Hard. Doug Tilstra resigned. Well, he didn't resign. I mean, he did resign from Ottawa. And when he told me he had this new position out there a few years ago, he went out there. I said, that sounds like a good deal. And it was a VP of Student Life. I said, that sounds good. You know what it really was? It was the position they had when I was in college. Dean of Students, you were the most hated, reviled person on campus. You are by the students at that time. Probably not now. Then one of the best guys that I ever met, adult, at Southern Missionary College, went from over the finance department to, everybody loved him. Everybody loved him. And then he became dean of students. He started taking these stands. They hated him. They hated him. Yes.
We've been in an era of go along to get along. And we're coming into times very soon where we have to have personal convictions. We have opinions, plenty of opinions, but very few convictions. But my personal convictions, I need to let the Holy Spirit work in other people's hearts. It's not my job to impel my convictions on them, but I must have them personally.
Yes. Yes.
I don't know where the position of silent majority falls. I don't have to stand on a street corner and explain my beliefs to somebody to have a personal belief. I'm not going to support that. About it, but I don't support it. I think that there's a little bit of this in your Bud Light story. I think a lot of those people aren't going to make a big deal. They're just not good.
They're not, yes.
I go to a fitness center. There's a guy there, got long hair. And he's really a nice guy.
I've heard enough already. Go ahead.
Yeah, all right. But I got to, over the last few years, several of his sisters who go there too. He was pretty open. One area of his life he wouldn't, he felt uncomfortable. Finally, about a month ago or 2 months ago, told me, hey, actually, really fine. And so I accepted that. He kind of, after he told me, he was unsure of himself and he was very unsure how I would react, So I've continued the silent treatment on him, which is to accept him and either way I was with him before the revelation that he gave me.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean now that I have very warm feelings about gays, or doesn't mean the other way, because I have 5 nephews who are gay, female and male. But God has not called me judge and to condemn people who are different than I am, or different than somebody in the church may think I ought to be. Because I went to a public university and I got that out of my system a long time ago, where I grew up in a home like that, which was extremely critical.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
Okay, so if somebody thinks that because I'm talking to somebody who's gay, I don't care. I got liberated a long time ago, but I don't go around hugging every guy that I think is gay.
Well, I get it. I got John. Thank you, John. John.
I think there are difficult issues that we embrace today, that it's okay for me to say, I just don't understand. And I'm really not sure where I stand. I think that if one of my daughters came home with another female partner, would I love her any less?
No.
I wouldn't. And I think, but we're watching the Olympics. And I went and watched this woman get the snot kicked out of her by this so-called other woman who was really a man. Now, I don't agree with that. Right? Now, that's my stand. But you and I have had conversations with very good friends that have said to us, I didn't volunteer for this. I didn't volunteer for these, right? With these feelings, but that's what I got, and I don't understand them either. So my point is that they all get a pass, and with this thing about love, okay, it's really easy for us to say, as long as it's done lovingly. But how do you define love? And this is just kind of where I've landed on this, if it's helpful. I always believe intent is really important. And if my intent is self-serving, because I can't talk to you because it would make me look poor, or it would make me less or greater, that's not love. My intent is to raise somebody else up, to inspire somebody else's heart, like that person that you mentioned at the beginning of the class that we needed to think about, that helped us. Now, maybe I'm getting to this love definition a little bit better. So what's my intent?
Thank you. Intent. Arlene, and then I want to tell you something. Go ahead.
Going back to Aquila and Priscilla and the relationship with Apollos, something that I admire about this couple, they did not confront Apollos in public, one, and second, they didn't criticize him. They invited him to a private meeting, and instead of criticizing, they taught him.
Right.
So to me, that's something I need to learn by people rather than, did you hear what they said wrong, rather than criticizing.
Just want to say before we get any deeper into this, and we're basically finished, I hope, with the gay thing. Last night I was on the phone for 20 minutes with a gay friend. So you get the perspective here. He's head of the Democratic Party in Hamilton County. He wanted me to support one of his candidates. We had this conversation many times in the past, and a couple of years ago, when we became friends, he asked me to support a certain candidate. And I said, look, you know my political persuasion, and I know yours, you're head of the Democratic, but isn't that a little stretch asking me to support this? He said, you supported me when I was a city councilman, and I'm gay, Ken. So I said, all right, who is it? Have them come talk to me. And I supported them. We were on the phone last night talking politics, and we will meet again next week with no politics, just to have a coffee. But don't think you got some bigot standing here. And by the way, on my last birthday party, I had a big blowout. One of my best friends is gay. We share it together. I think he's like 84. I think you were there. Quite a party.
That's the guy who said, I don't understand this either.
Yeah. His gay friends were there. We had a great time. Now, take that home before you leave the door. And this isn't a bigot stand here. I'm trying to understand. Still trying to learn how to deal with this issue. Now, I can read Romans 1 and 2, and I get pretty bowed up. And then I think, well, wait a minute now. Hold on, Rob.
I think the sum of what people are saying in here today, people watch behavior. They understand behavior. They don't understand sticks. And so many people use the Bible as a stick.
Yeah, you're right. And
I've thought about this a lot. I kind of view gay population sick. Say that because they are statistically well beyond the norm for people. They didn't ask for it. We don't ask for illness. I view it as a person who is ill, and we can help them. We don't get criticized people because they got cancer. They got something, but they're sick. And welcome them.
are you willing to change? You get information? Bud Light drinkers changed. They didn't protest. They didn't push people in. They acted privately. Wayne.
If you want to address the issue of the Olympics, drag queen, a supper depiction.
30 Catholic bishops gathered together yesterday, Catholic bishops, to protest the Olympics. very few people have come public. When the computer came, did you accept it? Did. Gain more knowledge. When the iPhone came, did you buy one? You did. Got more knowledge there. Have you been willing to change your knowledge through technology? Truth is constantly changing. That is a quote from your prophet of this church. Truth is constantly evolving. Quickly, John, we're going to wrap it up here.
Yeah, okay. Just because I am nice to a person doesn't mean that I approve or like what they're doing.
We got it.
And with my long story, so I gotta cut it really short, with my 5 gay nephews and a lot of other people I've known, they virtually all had a bad or no relationship with their fathers. And so I look at them as they're looking for their fathers and they end up being in a gay relationship, unfortunately, the way it all worked out. And so I'm not gonna take a position against somebody that had a bad relationship with their dads, and then they made a wrong choice later on because of a weakness that they had in their life.
Well, you're right. A lot to it. We just don't talk about it. Morally, our country has been burning down for the past 16 years. And this destruction has not been like a little campfire. It has been like a raging forest fire. It's burning. And all this time, I've been standing around with my hands in my pockets, not knowing what to do. Just like a lot of you sitting here, what to do, what to do. I've seen very little interest in these last years to seriously try to stop this nonsense until the Bud Light drinkers showed up. And they have taken on a Goliath that seemed impossible to beat back. They have rejected transgender lifestyle without one advertisement, without one banner, without this or that, just through the personal action. Rejected that. They have rejected Dylan Mulvaney's advertising campaign, Bud Light. So how do we view a Bud Light drinker? Someone who comes in from work and sits in his chair and his belly gets bigger and bigger every evening? Someone who has no religious or moral values? Do you think this person doesn't think about heaven or hell? You think that these people never think about where they're going to spend eternity? Are they just these worldly creatures who cannot become? Jerry Arnold was trying to build this new church. Of course, he had a building committee. I know there is a God because I hadn't started coming here yet, and I might have been asked to be on that committee. Jerry asked some of the people on the committee to go around and look at some other nice churches. Doesn't matter about what. Go to other denominations. He was shocked at the response. Some of these people, they would feel extremely uncomfortable going into any church that was not an Adventist church. Almighty. I mean, I have to laugh about it. I don't even know how to react to it. I have 6 great friends. I don't have best friends. I learned a long time ago that could be a mistake. I've got 6 great friends that I can count on one hand that most of them are in prayer meeting. Well, first of them are moderate beer or wine drinkers. Most of them are in prayer meeting every Wednesday night. They're in church every Sunday morning. And for crying out loud, please don't think that I want you to go out and buy a good bottle of wine or 6 packs of Bud and take it home with you. For crying out loud. That would be a heartbreaker for me. That would be very disappointing if you left your thinking that's what I'm saying. Seriously. What I'm trying to convey to you is that our country is morally spiraling down at a breathtaking speed. I'm not a doom and gloom. You can't be a real estate developer and be a doom and gloom guy. You can't. We've got to figure out what to do. How do we turn it around? How do we make this market accept what I've got? Go out and protest because you don't buy my buildings. You have to think through this, pray through this. I guess what I'm trying to say is this. We need all the people who are decent to be under the same big tent with us. We need those that don't necessarily go to church, but have a moral conviction. We need them in our camp. We need those that love their families, regardless of their religious ability or the lack thereof. They need to be with us so that we can make a stand on our conviction. Let's go back to Priscilla and Apollos just for a minute. He simply improved his mission and message. He improved it. What I have next to show you, Keith, on this slide, has been saying, well, this can't be really proven it happened. It's kind of folklore. I love this story. You know that in a lot of Bibles, John 8 and the woman caught in adultery is not in them. You know that? One of the most beautiful stories in the history of mankind and forgiveness and grace is not accepted in all Bibles. They say, well, it's folklore. It was added too late to the canon. Well, I don't care. I like it. It helps me. Whether this story is true, who cares? In 1940, Jan Paderewski, the famous Polish pianist, was doing a concert for Carnegie Hall in New York. It's wartime. It's for the Polish Relief Fund. As the story goes, a mom buys some tickets down on the front row, and she's got a little boy who just started learning to take piano lessons. And she sees some friends, and she starts talking to them, and the little boy has disappeared. He's gone up backstage because the curtain's still down. One around, he sees this beautiful Steinway piano. He sits down, and he starts playing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Suddenly the curtain comes up. He doesn't even notice. He's still playing, enjoying himself. His mom, to her horror, sees him up there. The concert's about to begin. So the great pianist walks out while he's playing, and he puts his arm around him, and he bends over, keep playing. Follows, keep preaching. And he says, keep playing. And he puts his arm around him, and he starts playing Bass Cliff. And he points to the orchestra, and the strings start. Then he reaches around with his right hand. He's playing some Mozart something or Beethoven something. And then the horns begin. And then the percussion becomes. Nobody remembered his great performance that night. All they remember was the little boy. I would encourage you to on these things. See somebody making an effort to do something and it's not quite right. Fixing it. Keep washing it the way you're doing it. You're learning, practicing it the way you're doing it. We'll get there. It's important. I hope this meant something to you. Really do.
And I don't think you're gonna be kicked out for that. I don't think you're gonna be kicked out for that.
Come again.
I don't think you're gonna be kicked out for that
Oh.
message.
Well,
They're fine.
there is a God. Thank you for coming. Next week, Dave Smith will be here. And I don't know who's after him yet. We'll decide. Probably John, but the last Sabbath of the month, Bernie Miller will be here. If you haven't heard Bernie, I encourage you to please put that on your calendar. Dave Smith, I mean, it doesn't get any better than Dave Smith for sure. So I'll see you next week. And hopefully everything will be in order. All the problems of the world will be solved. Roman is one of the students I work with. Roman, would you have our prayer, please?
Bow your heads with me. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for another day, a day that we can commune with you, with each other, a day we can learn, a day we can rest. Lord, as we enter into another week, we ask you to be with us. Each of our interactions, no matter who we're talking to, use us so that we can further your message. In your name we pray.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. If anybody would like to get on our email list, we send the lessons out each week. Come and see me and we'll get you written up, okay? Thank you.